Welcome to the BS report. This segment is going to be about a period of time when I was working in the prison and when I was finding and started what we call the Canvas Project. It is and was just as it sounds. It's a project to do art inside the prison walls. It's been quite a few years ago, but one of the wardens had approached me at that time and said, "Hey, we'd like to have something like this where the artists are producing, doing some art." And honestly, I wasn't sure what he was talking about. I had just started working at SICI at that time, and the warden, who at that time was Chad Page, was like, "Yeah, I've been trying to get this going, and nobody seems to want to do it." And so I was like, "Okay, I'll try it out." So I liked the idea and the concept, and honestly was just kind of curious what it was going to look like. Before that point, I volunteered for a lot of different things, which were outside my job description, but this was something that sounded, unique and cool. Um, so it was going to be different, and it absolutely was. So I began working with the current program manager at that time, um, and he started getting canvases, paints, all that stuff. And, yeah, this was the same program manager who once asked me why I cared so much about those people who I was working with and trying to help. So not the best human being, but at least in this instance, he helped me get some canvases and paint. So that was kind of cool. And then once I had the product, so to speak, I started looking for artists. And how did I do that? Well, I just started talking to people. Um, I had regular classes, I had case manager meetings. I just started bringing it up, and people were interested. I had simple expectations, and quite honestly, I was just hoping to find some artists who were looking to do some creative stuff, be kind of cool. And so, how did I do that? Basically, I would ask them what they wanted to do or what they were trying to do. If they didn't have any examples, I would ask them to sketch it out for me, and then I would just kind of turn them loose. Um, if they're not actually creating, like most of them were, um, the sketch would help me kind of understand what their goal was. Um, when it comes to prison, the weekends are a tough time. Programming is usually not happening. There may be visitation, but a lot of staff isn't there, especially like case manager staff. So I would come on the weekends, set up tables, work it out with the security about who was, approved to be back working on stuff, and then just kind of, you know, get them set up and then hands off. Um, I honestly cannot recall if there were ever any issues, which was kind of cool. I thought I was very fortunate in that aspect. I did this for quite some time, which you'll notice just from all the pictures. Um, as I considered, you know, how I was going to present this segment, I struggled for a long time on just how to put it together. And honestly, I'm still not sure this is the best way, but I considered doing segments for each artist, thought about that. But I think what I'm going to do is go through the pictures and talk about the artist as as it kind of moves forward. Um, and as I was looking through all the different pictures, this project just kind of got bigger and bigger. So it's hang in there. Um, so I do have to apologize. There are some artists who I do not recall their names, or the artwork which is there doesn't have their names on it. Um, I struggled with some artists where I advocated strongly for them to put their name and the date on their work, but some people just were not comfortable doing that. And so some pieces have no names on them. Oh, and I should mention, and I'll put this in the video as well, there's also art in some of the same pictures which you can see over at the Justice Arts Coalition. Over time, I was submitting stuff to them too. So ideally, as I narrate this, once I disappear, you would hear some background music. I can easily add the music. That's not the issue. The issue is acquiring permissions, which I'm not entirely sure how to go about doing. So I may have no music, which I apologize for the silence, other than my voice, but we'll see how that goes. So I'll try mostly to let the art do the talking, but some pieces, you just have to say something because they're pretty amazing. Um, I believe I'm extremely fortunate to have found these artists, uh, and some of the things and concepts and pieces that they did, quite simply, were amazing. Um, and you'll see that some artists did a lot of work. So my goal was to be open to everyone, and I communicated that often. If someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I have this idea," I never told them no. I always asked them questions, asked how they were doing with things. Um, there was always expectations. You couldn't be causing problems out there. So more than a few artists, super talented, they were just really struggling. And I was like, look, this can be a goal, and I'll work with you on getting to that goal. But you cannot be doing what you're doing and participate until we see some improvements. It was unfortunate, but the artists that I got to work with, man, they were amazing. Um, so very cool stuff. Um, it should be noted, some of these artists were very prolific. I would come in, set them up on a Saturday, and before I knew it, when I showed up on Monday, they would have something done. And sometimes something funny would happen with the artist. Um, they would work on something, and I'd be like, "Yeah, that is cool." And I could see the progression. And then Monday, I'd show up, and they had totally started over because they were like, "No, I don't like that." And it's like, okay, but it was pretty neat. I found their work to be amazing and beautiful. Uh, some of these pieces hopefully are still in the units, and I found them to be very inspiring. Some staff would actually comment to me about how they found the artwork, inspiring and amazing. And oddly enough, I would also have some staff, usually leadership, who would say that they were not happy with what was coming out. Um, Maybe I had a bias on what I was seeing, certainly possible. And I would say there's definitely a bias against me towards the end. So while it seemed like leadership did not appreciate what they were doing, it never took from what they were doing. It was always a good thing. Um, After a while, when it came to that negativity, I just had to kind of tune it out. Leadership around me became very negative, and literally anything that I was doing was perceived as being bad. And, I was just in a very toxic and hostile work environment, which was unfortunate. So I took steps to not let anybody know, as far as that I was working with, and especially the artist, just how bad it was getting. Anyway, this artwork probably represents one of the best times that I was experiencing there at IDOC, just because I was seeing some amazing things come out of there. So I hope you enjoy all these images. They are from a moment in time captured in a period of time where maybe things aren't all that great, but by some amazing individuals. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so I'm going to try to do this and make this work for real. Maybe a little off and on, but we'll see how this goes. So first image is a picture of my office. You can see a lot going on in there, pretty chaotic. I like to hang stuff that was going on just so it would be present if I couldn't get it out on the tiers. That was always a thing, but you can see how it kind of changed a little bit. Um, this is another image. That's from my chair. I was like looking at that. That always helped me like start my day in a lot of ways. That's the sunlight coming through. I like that. Here's some other images. Yeah, and this is Mr. Joe. Uh, he was kind of the unofficial mascot. Miss that guy. He was such a precious little guy. come and hang out with me when I went out there on the weekends. Just some other pieces and different areas of progress, I suppose. For a while, I got grief for having a naked woman in my office. So that was kind of funny. Kind of a cool piece. Getting close to the end of this first little bit, see some progression. That last piece, Captain America, I thought that was kind of a cool piece as well. Now this is Miss Daniels. This is her work, very impressionistic. I just thought it was very cool. I really like that one. Some other pieces. She was very talented. She would do stuff on anything. Now this is one, I don't know who the artist is. I don't know if it's somebody that had sketched something so I could let them paint, but I like this. It's very cool. The next artist, Miss Barnes, very talented. One day they would be working on something, and the next day it'd be totally different. I never knew what they were going to do. They would give me an idea, and I'd just be like, "Yeah, that's cool." And so you see the different things that they were working on, and maybe not all of these are hers, but I think I got most of them correct. I apologize if I didn't, but I think I'm pretty close. I like that one. That one's pretty cool. And this one. There's a lot of good stuff here. Next artist is Miss Dontich. I think I'm saying that right. I really like this image. It's got a lot going on in there. It's kind of cool. Could only get her to do one, unfortunately, but I thought that was impressive. This is Miss Doubted, which I'm saying their name wrong. Apologies. See kind of progression there. Also very cool. I think that's the only thing they did for me. And then we have this Pringle slash Marshall. I think it's finally their name. And progression of some works that they did. Some very impressive stuff. Uh, you can see different things. They worked on all sorts of different mediums, and that's kind of how I came to see some of their stuff. Just because, it's like, what is this? Who's doing this? And that's how I found them. I had to convince them to do some things because they, they weren't quite sure, if I'm recalling correctly. That is, it has been a few years. Anyway, take a look at this stuff. Oh, no, I don't remember by. There's some repeat images, but you see the black and the white. Um, for those of you who don't know, that's how film used to look, the negatives. And they came up with this idea of doing pictures and images that represented snapshots. I thought it was really ingenious. There's a really good picture of it. Just really cool. And lastly, there was this little character piece that is kind of neat as well. So I like, she was very creative. Next, we have the artwork of Miss Lovely, and that is correct. That's their last name. Staff would get in trouble sometimes for calling somebody Lovely. Anyway, some cool stuff. This is a sketch that they did to show me what they were imagining on something else, which I thought was very cool and impressive. Can see the finished product there. They often did things that they were imagining where they wanted to be, which I thought was very cool. Uh, Something as they were working on it, completed. And again, some mirroring images as well, or repeats, but very green, very beautiful, very awesome. I really like that one. Next, we have Miss Hernandez. There was not much that they could do. They worked on all sorts of different mediums, and I tried to challenge them with different topics and subjects, and it always seemed like there was something new and unique. So here's some of their work. I like these a lot. See how I did all this one transitions. Very cool. That was fitting. There they are on the unit. It was a heavy lift to try to get things placed on the unit. Sometimes I was able to do it, and sometimes I just wasn't. There was no rhyme or reason for it that I could tell. Next, we have Miss Morales. I really like their art. They did a lot of cool things. Uh, this one, some people did not like, but I thought it was pretty cool, especially when you see the finished product. Some of it was definitely challenging, but that's what art is, if I recall correctly. The Naked Woman, got grief about that one, but very cool. And there was this experiment with the Scarlett Johansson. That was the final product. uh, Still pretty neat. Something in progress. I like the heart. Next artist we have is Miss Peterson. I liked her process. It was very cool. You never really knew where exactly they were going. I really want to see this one finished. I only saw a few steps because they got out. Congratulations. But very cool. Those eggs were her kids. I don't know if this was her starting something or not. I can't recall. But you'll see this next little image, something in the upper right, or I guess right in the middle there. That's her piece. And you can see the progression. People come by the office and go, what is going on here? I'm like, I don't know. Let's see what happens. So you can see the progression here. That was very cool. Next artist misheard. This is an example of somebody doing something. I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. I can't wait to see how that turns out. Then I show up a week later or whatever, and that becomes this. This was misheard. Very cool. I like this one too. I need to stop saying cool so often, but it's amazing. And then this rose as well. Just very impressive. This next segment is the unknown artist portion. I either can't read the names or have forgotten who they are, or they decline to put their name on the piece that they did. Some of these artists are also no longer with us, whether it's death by violence, uh, overdose, or even suicide. It's very unfortunate. These two images I really like. Very cool. Dragon is impressive. This was in progress with something that I think they totally changed. I don't recall. It may have been this, but that happens sometimes. There was some chalk art, which I took photos of. I thought was pretty neat. Some good stuff there. Some of these pieces are just a reminder, that there are some pretty amazing people in prison, and we forget that sometimes as they are dehumanized and, in many cases, victimized by IDOC and staff, unfortunately. This one's kind of in progress. I called her the Green Woman. For a while, I had her up at the corporate office or downtown on Orchard. Um, oh yeah, and these are some pieces that are in the units. I like those; they're pretty neat. Um, yeah, the Green Woman, had her up for quite a while downtown, and apparently she unnerved people that were there. I made a joke that there were little cameras in her eyes and they were watching them. Um, for whatever reason, they didn't like it, and then after that, I had to get permission to like change it up. But look at her; she's super cool. Um, something in progress there. But anyway, found that pretty funny that that was so upsetting to them that they couldn't have it, in their boardroom or whatever. More in progress pieces. It took them a while to do that. I like this Vader. Very very impressive. Oh, these are not artwork so much as photographs that I took. I throw those in there for fun. And then the last piece. Next are the writings. Uh, I would submit some of these photos, these canvases to the Justice Art Coalition, which if you haven't checked it out, I'm going to try to embed a link here. We'll see if I'm successful in that, but it's pretty cool what they do and how they support the artist. But what I would also ask the artist to do at IDOC, I would ask them to write me a little piece to go with the artwork that they produced. For some, they would struggle and fight me on it, be like, why do I need to do that? This is enough. Be like, well, it's so I can have more understanding about what it is that you're doing because this is important. And some would, show me things and some would not. But I would always ask on my desk before I left unexpectedly. Um, I had quite a few writings, so I only have a few pieces, but I got quite a few, and I would submit them with their artwork. Some of that stuff is on the website. I don't have too much of it because amongst everything else that I was trying to do and balance and fight the good fight and all those things, um, and struggle, with everything which you can see, it was a lot. And so I did the best that I could, but this was important. So I tried to do all that. So here's some writings. And it should be noted, I worked on both the male and the female side. On the female side, out of every woman that I worked with in that population, um, I essentially went through all their records because I was assigning every offender, inmate, resident to case managers. So I was managing that whole process. And so I could see what the different crimes were, why they were in prison, and so on and so forth, how they progressed, their education level, everything. Uh, on balance, women are way more educated than the men when it came to looking at those two populations. I did the same thing on the male side as far as reading all that stuff and assigning. So I could compare and contrast that. And the other big thing that should be notable on the female side, most women are nonviolent offenders, and I would say 9 out of 10 of them were in prison for drugs, which this is Idaho's answer to all things, be very punitive when it comes to women and harm them. And in this situation, which you can see on the channel, and I'm sorry to get on that soapbox for just a minute, um, but IDOC actually harms women in their custody. They're exposed to rape from other offenders, rape from the staff, harassment, and even worse. And this has been going on for a long time. When I started picking it up, when I got there in 2017, I started raising, concern and documenting. Oh yeah, they're also being denied health care. All of that, I started becoming the problem. And let me just tell you, nonviolent, highly educated, there for drugs, um, they should not be in prison. But what do I know? They came after me for that. But this is what I think. And here's a few writings, which I think you will appreciate. So let me stop talking. Let me stretch that out a little bit so you can read it. Of course, you can pause it and then expand it. And then we'll get to the end here. We've reached the end. I appreciate you watching and checking out this art and these artists. I hope the majority of them are doing well out there. At the end here, this last page, you see that hyperlink for the Justice Arts Coalition. It's a .org. In theory, that'll be a hyperlink, but I don't think I've figured that out quite yet. So I'll try to put it in there, but you can also Google search it and find it that way, or just copy it from here, and maybe that'll work. So this is the BS report. Be safe out there and take care.